but probably not fast enough to keep them from being captured or attacked by dogs or, whatever. And by then it's too late. At this point, I could probably let the elves loose and they would run away fast enough to survive. While it seems anticlimactic, just think to yourself, arena. Arena. Now we have gladiators. Gladiators. Okay, with the siege effectively dealt with. Sorry, it's just a small one. Just a flesh wound. We're probably going to lose the dogs at the gates because they are both probably badly wounded at this point. I can look, but it looks like they probably had parts of themselves whacked off before the goblins actually got captured here. Yep, right front paw on one of them, left front paw from the other one. A lot of dog blood. Pretty good on the whole. Pretty good on the whole. Not too bad. Couple of paws, total siege. Notice that we've got our first blood in our entryway now. This is like a Dwarf Fortress staple. Your entryway has to be full of blood everywhere by the time your fortress finally falls. This entryway is only a temporary entryway. Please excuse the lack of a giant pool of diced goblins. The whole point is to get to those nice little sweet treats that we've got sitting in the cages. Our goal here is going to be to have enough cages to immediately replace all those cage traps and hopefully fill the compartment with a little more, because it looked like some of them slipped around the edges because we haven't filled up enough of the hallway yet. And once we've got those goblins pulled in, we will effectively just disarm them, basically. I'll leave them their armor and I'll strip them of all their weapons, and then we'll build the cages in a room, and I'll station all my military dwarves in that room, and then I'll flip a lever and release the goblins, 2 or 3 at a time, and they'll be pummeled by 30 dwarves until they die. Now, the good news is, as that kind of sounds kind of quick, I'm going to give the military training weapons.
I have an idea.
I claim this workshop in the name of invention!
And another Fey mood. Yay!
I can't do it.
And it's a metal crafting and or blacksmithing kind of Fey mood, so he's going to become something like an armor smith or a weaponsmith or metal crafter, something useful. Even if this artifact isn't useful, we're going to gain a highly skilled metalworking dwarf out of the deal. With luck, this will be something we can build, like a weapon, and I'll build like a weapon trap in the middle of the dining room. Having an artifact built into your dining room wildly raises the value of the dining room and will incredibly affect the amount of happy thoughts that your dining room generates. Because everyone will admire the artifact and then enjoy partying it up in the room and then have a nice meal and a good drink, and by that time you're really stacking on the happy thoughts. Notice that some of our dwarves refuse to get happy. See this guy here? Yeah, we're watching you, buddy. We got our eyes on you. Yeah, actually, floor hatches are one of the better artifacts you can get. You can basically build them anywhere, and the people who pass by, I can build them just in some random spot in the middle of my staircase, and everybody that passes that point of the stairs is going to be happy. So if it was a floor hatch, for example, I would build it in the center stair of the dining room where the central staircase passes through it, and basically every person who comes into that dining room is going to see that artifact and admire it and get a happy thought, and then they're going to wander in and have a decent meal in a nice dining room that's worth a buttload of dwarf bucks because of the artifact that's built in the middle of it. And they're going to have a nice meal and a nice drink, and they're basically, everybody in the unhappy category is going to move to at least happy, if not ecstatic, just from that one artifact alone. It's a major improvement to have an artifact that you can actually build. The vault is basically for dealing with those artifacts I can't do anything with, and so, yeah, that's what you end up with there. Now, I could limit this to, say, just goblin cages, but then if they bring trolls or if they have mounts, they wouldn't get positioned here. I really do want to leave this as just any cages, empty or full, get moved here. Cages are impervious to escape. They are effectively null spaces. They don't exist. Anything in a cage is effectively removed from reality. It's like a force bubble. And we'll turn back to training / active training because we don't have a siege to defeat anymore. We're in good shape there. Notice we've got a bunch of them going to archery practice now. Let's see if we can catch a few of them in the act, so to speak. And there's our first trainer. Notice that they are not in their military uniform. They're effectively off-duty, and they'll just come and train on their own.
Oh, it's completed. I've made an amazing artifact.
The good news is we're going to get a fabulous armor smith out of this, so we'll be able to crank out some really high-quality steel armor when we get to that point. The bad news is that an artifact low boot made out of copper is about as useful as a phyllite scepter. It's a boot, decorated with giraffe leather, with a picture of some nameless forgotten beasts. Yeah, this is a real high moment for the dwarves. Okay, no, it's not. It is, however, worth a lot of money. Unfortunately, you can't sell it. However, if you should happen to come along, yeah, we talked about training dogs in like the first or second episode. My war dogs are all up in a pasture on the surface. The boot here, you know, if you were coming along as an adventurer, for example, one of the neat things you can do, and the reason I build a vault in case I ever decide to play in adventurer mode, which I usually don't, you can stick all these, you know, boots in, all these useless artifacts into your vault in a bin, and basically, when your adventurer comes along, one of the bins in your fortress ruins will be, all of your stuff gets scattered everywhere, but if you explore long enough, whichever bin it was that held all the artifacts is somewhere, not necessarily in the vault, somewhere on your map, and this one boot that weighs 2 pounds is worth more than any adventurer is probably going to see in their lifetime, basically, and you can effectively, you know, pick up a handful of artifacts, run back to town, and buy, you know, anything you want. Since the question arose, I think I probably have some more dogs to train. Let me look and see if we've got any dogs that haven't been converted to war dogs yet. Looks like just the puppies, so I'll cover it, but I can't actually review it because we don't have any dogs to actually be trained. This zone is a pasture zone that is also marked as an animal training zone. And all you do to train a dog, for example, is assign it to the pasture as the animal training pasture, basically. And since I'm pasturing all my dogs in this square, I just assign them to both pasture and train here. And then once you've got them assigned and someone who has the animal training labor, you go into the main menu screen under Animals, find the animal, and hit W for war training. That's all there is to it. That dog is sitting in the middle of a training zone. Somebody will come along, they train him into a war dog, and away you go. That's it. That's all there is to it. War dogs are a marginal improvement on regular dogs. They're not that much better. You can't expect dogs by themselves to, for example, turn away a siege. It's just not going to happen. Oh, and I don't think we told our citizens they can now do things like, clean out the cages, did we? No, I don't think we did we? Yep, let's put the civilians back on inactive so that the doctors will come along and clean out our cages and get our nice new goblin or gladiators down to the arena storage where they can await their eventual fate. And we've traded with the elves, and they'll escape. Looking good so far, guys. Of course, the next siege will hit right about now, with our cage traps all down and, not yet re-equipped, and then elves trying to escape at the same moment, and yeah. Notice that one of our dwarves has now moved to unhappy status, the yellow number 1 down there at the bottom. That's about as far as I ever want a dwarf to get down, ever, ever, ever. So let's find him. It looks like Sigyn, her, is not particularly happy here. So let's see what Sigyn is up to. She got a fine table, has been on patrol duty forever and a day, doesn't have a bedroom, got pulled off patrol duty and doesn't have any other jobs. Yeah, this is pretty unpleasant, unfortunately. We need to get her some happy thoughts, and unfortunately I can't just jerk her off military duty because then she gets pissed about being relieved from military duty because she doesn't have any skills. So we kind of need to get her trained as soon as possible, and then that will, kind of help. But beyond that, we also need to make sure that she's getting a decent meal and that she's the first person to get a decent bedroom. So we'll give her a masterwork bed, a masterwork coffer, a masterwork cabinet, and a masterwork door. Now, in this particular case, I'm going to assign the bedroom manually. Like I said, you don't have to. In this case, though, I want to make sure that the dwarf who is, really having a rough time of it gets the, medical treatment, so to speak, for depression that they really need. Now, hopefully, she'll come along and sleep at some point, and her husband won't simply take up the bed for her. Since they're both in the military, there's no guarantee that they both don't use the bedroom, and she never gets to sleep in it because he's always in it. I might be able to assign her the boots, but I probably wouldn't because they're copper. And copper's about as protective as tissue paper. It's only slightly better than leather. So while the boots are, very shiny and would make her happy, it would also severely compromise her effectiveness when she gets her feet lopped off by the first goblin she fights. However, as people in the stream are noticing, the treatment for dwarf depression is in fact lots and lots of shiny stuff. We'll get our engravers working on smoothing out this area so that their bedroom is about as high quality as I can make it, and then we'll get some regular bedrooms assigned for all those other schmucks who aren't unhappy just yet. There's not a particularly good there's not a particularly good way, unfortunately, to assign coffers to an area. In the default version of Dwarf Fortress, basically, bags are also considered to be containers. Bags aren't worth nearly as much as a masterfully carved, obsidian treasure box, basically. So you kind of have to skip around the bags, or you could build them somewhere else and then get rid of them, for example. So see, I keep building the bags when I mean to build the boxes, and then I have to go back and clean them out. Okay, and with all those nasty bags out of the way, just in time to only have 2 boxes left to build. Grr. Our hauler corps and our unused military will come along momentarily and start building all this stuff into actual bedrooms. And they'll complain about, I can't build that here, I can't build that there, because there's people standing all over everything. So you'll have to go back and kind of unsuspend these things when you do it en masse like this.
I can't do it. I won't do it.
Sorry, sir, I can't do it. I can't do that there. I can't do it. I just can't.
Sir, I hate saying no to you, but no.
Basically, when you get a large enough number of haulers, you can perform any task that can be performed in parallel can effectively be done almost instantaneously. So, for example, my smelting operations, which I run with large numbers of haulers, if I've got the stones on hand and in place near the smelters, I can basically run my smelters and just bang, rip out the iron as fast as I can get the stones there. Now, you could do better if your furnace operators were all trained and you had an equivalent number, you would be doing better. But generally speaking, 10 or 12 haulers are going to do a better job of it than, 1 or 2 furnace operators. Where that's not true is when quality matters, like, for example, when you're making armor and weapons.
I won't do it.
Now, these are fully equipped, ready to go, completely decked out bedrooms. They're not color-coded, but they're done. All I do is assign each one to be a bedroom. It will automatically take up as much space as it can. Dwarves will come along, they will sleep in the bedrooms rather than the dormitory, and the moment an unowned bed is slept in, it belongs to that dwarf. I use a pair at most of engravers. I do not use a large number of engravers because the problem you run into is getting them all trained high enough to where their engravings will be of value when you do engraving. I'm only doing smoothing right now. This is not engraving. With right now, I think I have one legendary engraver and one who's about level 4, and the legendary guy came in at skill 11, so that makes that that kind of makes the sense you'd expect. The pair of them will engrave this entire room or entire area, and by the time they're done engraving everything in this area, they're probably going to be fairly close to two legendaries, at which point I'll turn them loose on making engravings, which will start documenting the history of our fortress as we go. Hopefully. Keep an eye on the happiness levels as we go here, because what you should start to see is that whereas before we were pooling in this, 2 range here, we'll slowly start to have our dwarves pool at the upper end of this scale. Ideally, you want all your dwarves to be ecstatic, because at that point they can start ignoring really heinous things like a siege getting in and butchering half your military. I'm just getting the stabber squad set up at this point, so we'll get our spear dwarves up and running. We've got several people who are haulers, for example. Now we've got 36 haulers, and some of them are already trained spear dwarves. So that's really what I'm going for, is folks who have a little bit of experience are just going straight into the spear squad. See, now this guy who was our military leader here, he's actually a really good swords dwarf. Yeah, I don't use swords. Swords are like a warhammer and an axe and a spear, only not as good at any of those things as those things. We're going to put her in the Smasher squad, though. She's a beast. So Cog here is about to have his command stripped from him because he's useless with a hammer. And we're going to replace him with Libash. Oh, I can't remove him because he's leader. Ugh. Unfortunately for him, that does not stop me from simply replacing him. However, I do need a captain of the guard, so we're going to go ahead and create a captain of the guard. We're not going to give him any armor, but he's going to start out as captain of the guard. With the captain of the guard, we now have access to the justice system. It's about time we started talking about this. I really haven't gotten into it too much yet. Justice is a cold, hard thing in the Dwarven world. It is a brutal, brutal master. So, here's what you need to know. First off, jails are preferable to beatings, and that's really the only alternative that dwarves have. Yeah, Z-Choppa. As in, when I find a new person who's good at an axe, I get them to Z-Choppa. Actually, I just realized I don't want this here. I could toss an unruly dwarf into the arena, but I promised to kind of, train people, not just simply show them how to sacrifice dwarves. That's easy. Training them how to do it right is a little harder. Okay, what we've created here is a jail with what will eventually be a checkpoint leading into another round room, which will then dive down through the caverns deeper into the earth. This jail area here is going to be used to restrain dwarves who commit crimes. We haven't had any criminals yet, but it will happen sooner or later.
Sir, he can't do that there.
How did we make a mine worker into our chief medical dwarf? That was the whole point of having this guy down here. Hell, he's not even the best. Let's get started on the arena while we're thinking about it.
Sir, he can't do that there.
No. The boat just needs something.
And we've gotten large enough now that we have a mayor. Joy. And our mayor has mandated that we shall make crutches. Crutches. We already have a Forgotten Beast roaming around downstairs, but he came in the caverns and we already had them sealed up. None of our dwarves have actually seen him. We only know he's there because we get the enrage announcements when he goes into a rage. Yeah, at this point our dwarves are both A, not equipped completely, and B, don't have any skill to speak of. So I don't really want to tantrum spiral my fortress quite this early in the quite this early in the game, it makes a little more sense to me to go ahead and just hold off on punching a hole into the caverns and dealing with that particular beast until my militia is a little better trained. Once they are a little better trained, I'm down for opening the caverns and, you know, letting the mayhem commence. They ain't got to be legendary gods, but sicking a bunch of guys who are, you know, skill 1, 2, 3 on a forgotten beast is a recipe for potential disaster, depending on what it's made out of. And since nobody's even seen the damn thing yet, I'm just inclined to let it roam for now, and we'll come back and deal with it. It's also possible that there may be more than one down there, because by definition, the only one we know of is the one that's actually gotten the enraged notices. There's no guarantee that he's the only one in the caves. Yes, I noticed. She'll start to go back up as she gets more happy thoughts. Let's take a look and see what changed in her mental state here, just to give you an idea how this works. So she slept uneasily due to noise, but she slept in her own great bedroom recently. She admired a fine table, long patrol duty, without a proper room, upset about relief from duty. So just by the one bedroom, she went up a category, despite then also having a negative consequence due to noise. So when the long patrol duty and or proper room and or relieved from duty and or uneasily due to noise moods start to fall off, she's going to improve dramatically. Oh, and she had a sparring session because she's sparring right now with one of the other smashes. She's going to steadily improve in mood from this point on. I don't think there's any reason why she would backslide. Now, you might be wondering what the hell I'm doing here with all these tables and statues and chairs, but when a dwarf is imprisoned, they actually get kind of unhappy about it, and one of the solutions to that is simply to make the jail cell into a sort of a micro-palace filled with the treasures of dwarven civilization, so that while they're imprisoned, they're admiring all the nice things around them, the nice chain, the nice, statue, the nice table, the nice chair. I'm actually going to set up small stockpiles here that take food and drinks from the main prepared food and main drink stockpiles, so that there's always, fresh, high-quality booze and high-quality meals in the jail cells for them. At which point, a dwarf who does commit a crime gets assigned to a jail chain, basically, and they'll be chained up next to a bed, a table, a chair, food, booze, a statue. And if I can do it, I'm going to do a weapon trap inside each one of the doors, so that the weapon trap itself the weapons in the weapon trap can be admired as well. And so what we'll end up with a situation where, a dwarf who's taken off to jail is going to have a small negative thought for being imprisoned, and their mood is going to go through the roof because they're sitting in the middle of the lap of luxury, basically. Yeah, yours, McSerial Killer, has admired a fine electric chair lately. Yeah, pretty much. But keep in mind, if a dwarf gets unhappy and then punches another dwarf, as much as I'd love to be able to blame that dwarf, what's really going on there is that me, the player, I have failed that dwarf by failing to provide the sufficient luxuries necessary to keep him happy. As you can see down there at the bottom, a couple seasons ago we had 13 ecstatic dwarves, and now, fully a third of our population is ecstatic. Well, yeah, it is a free vacation, but keep in mind, the guys that get assigned to prison are the lucky ones. The unlucky ones get assigned to hammerings. Dwarves that get assigned to a hammering, yeah, they're not going to survive real well. This will be the office for our captain of the guard, who does require an office now. As you can see, our captain of the guard expects to have, a lot of stuff provided to him that we're not providing right now, and not having that stuff will make him unhappy. Likewise, our mayor is going to expect a better than average, setup for him. We'll get that stuff for him momentarily. Right now, he can just suffer.
I can't do it. Ugh, no way. Ugh, no way.
Caged prisoners will not die from thirst or hunger in the case of enemy prisoners. And I guess that kind of feeds back into our discussion of jail. The other way you can do jail besides chains is to use cages. I don't recommend cages, but you can do it. Dwarves in cages cannot feed themselves and cannot get to booze, so they must be brought water by other dwarves. That would be the feed, care for prisoners labor, I think. Feed, care for wounded labor, I believe is the same thing. Effectively, if you put a dwarf in a cage as part of the justice system, if you imprison him, he has to be brought food and water by other dwarves, or he will starve. And bringing food and water to prisoners and wounded is way low on the priority scale compared to other jobs. So basically, if you have no idle dwarves who have the necessary labor, they never get fed with predictable consequences. Goblins and other invaders, however, effectively do not eat. They are immune to starvation, dehydration, you name it. Oops, there's where my other chain went. Built the wrong thing. Alright, and our jail cells are just about complete. There's one left thing I got left to do. And he's mandated more crutches. Yeah. Darn it, I thought I got rid of that one. Nuts. This food stockpile will take only drinks, so this will be where the booze is stored for each prisoner. This stockpile, which has 8 spaces, will only take food, prepared food, and it will hold prepared food for each prisoner. Thereby, I guarantee that there is prepared food available for them and prepared drinks available for them when they are assigned to their cells. And we just had a reindeer starve to death because something didn't get put into a pasture. So first thing we gotta do is unforbid that and get rid of the corpse because otherwise it'll stink up the dining room. We also looks like we have a yak or something that's followed one of the migrant waves in that we didn't catch, so let's get him butchered. There it is, a water buffalo bull. Haulers will refill the stockpiles. I do need to set them up. The only reason I stopped is because I heard the screaming of the reindeer calf starving to death. In addition to haulers being able to refill the stockpiles properly, what we need to make sure that we do is we need to set it to take from the appropriate stockpiles so that this area gets filled preferentially. That way, although this area will get filled first, there's not enough stockpile space here to really do it. So the jail cells will actually be the last place that has food and drinks in the event of starvation, but what'll happen is we'll fill this stuff up pretty quickly, and then immediately the overflow into the main stockpile will be what most dwarves should be eating and drinking from. This room being used by Justice and not being assigned as a proper dining room means nobody should be coming down all the way down here to eat and drink except the dwarves who are assigned here directly. And basically what should happen is we should get a gaggle of haulers coming along and dropping off booze and getting it taken care of for us, basically. Now we'll cover one other thing we need to do here. We need to designate a traffic order. This is not a literal restriction. Dwarves will walk across it. But what it basically says is each tile of this path is effectively equivalent to 50 unmarked hallway tiles. So what we end up with is a situation for if a dwarf decides he wants to eat the food from the jail for whatever reason, he's going to treat it like it's 300 tiles away or 400 tiles away or 800 tiles away, and the food in the dining room is only 100 tiles away, so he'll go there first.
It won't work.
Now, dwarves who actually have to perform whatever tasks it is, i.e., that is to say, they're dropping off food in the cells, they will make that trip regardless of the length because the job requires them to make that trip. But they will avoid it primarily. Now, there's a downside to all of this, generally speaking, and that is you'll get a situation where, and it doesn't always work, as you can see, I've got people eating and drinking in my jail now. Damn it. Theoretically, what this will do is effectively set you up so that your dwarves will have food and drinks with them at all times. I guess from my standpoint, doing it this way for jail cells, the advantage is that your prisoners will have someone to talk to because people will come and pay them visits. Socialization does improve their mood, so this is another technically good thing. Looky, looky. Aren't we glad we're safe underground? Sort of. Someone asked if prison breaks occur. Sort of. A dwarf who is assigned to a chain can theoretically break out. They will not willingly do so. However, if a dwarf drops to the bottom level of their happiness, all the way down here to this 0 happiness, and goes berserk